Okay, guys. So far we have talked about the TestNG, and we have seen that why TestNG is used, and we have talked that it is a test-driven development. Okay, it is a framework used for test-driven development where you can manage your entire test cases using the TestNG. You can decide the flow of execution of your test cases. Then you can group your test cases, or maybe you can manage your test cases as per your need, as per your requirements. You can execute them as and when required. You can generate a report. Okay, you can pass parameters. You can use TestNG for data driven development also. Okay, when your data driven testing is required, when you have lots of data against only single test case, at that point also TestNG will help you. TestNG will also help you to execute your test cases parallelly. Okay, so there are so many advantages of the TestNG. But today what we are going to see is we are going to talk about the execution sequence of the test cases. Okay, so what we have is @test methods with us. Can you see the code over here? So I'm going to remove other methods from the class. Oops, sorry, I accidentally closed the Eclipse. Let me open that. Okay, so let me quickly close this one. Let's open the Eclipse again. Okay, so we are talking about the execution sequence of the test cases and how we can customize the execution sequence as per our requirements. Okay, this is what we are going to talk today. So what is our requirement is to decide the execution sequence of the test cases. So how we can decide the execution sequence of our test cases. Okay, for that, what we will do is we will write, let's say 5 or 6 test cases first, and then we will talk about deciding the sequence of execution of the test cases. In this tutorial, what we are going to do also, we are going to write test cases in different classes rather than in the same class. Okay, and we will see that how we can execute those test cases also, and how we can include them in the reporting also. Okay, so can you see over here, right now we have only 2 test cases. Okay, we have only 2 test cases here. Okay, and let us say I'm going to write some simple message over here, system.out.println. Sorry if you can't see the font. Okay, M1 test case. Okay, M1 test case. This is the message I'm going to write, and this is a M2 test case. Let's say M2 test case. So these are the 2 test cases we have. Now we are going to create few more test cases. Let's say total 5 test cases we are going to write, 3, 4, and 5. Let's change the name of them. M1, M2, M3, and M5. These are the 5 methods that we have, and every method is having the message corresponding to it. Okay, and every method is having @test annotation. Now we already have studied that to whatever method we apply this annotation @test. Okay, that method will become a test case. Now here all these 5 methods are considered as test cases. Now if I execute this class, so see how I can execute. I can directly right click on this class. I can go to the run as, and I can execute it from here. Or what else you can do? You can go to the TestNG, sorry. We can go to the testng.xml file, and in this file we can mention the name of class which has the test cases. In our case, test annotations. This is a class and which has test cases. Now we have to include that class in the TestNG file. If we don't include the class in the testng.xml file, then test cases will not execute from testng.xml. Okay, so if you guys want to see, let me show you how it happens. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm commenting out the entire classes tag here. That's it. And now if I try to execute this, you will find that no test case will execute. Can you see? 0 test runs here. Okay, in the result section, can you see over here? Total test runs 0, failure 0, and skips 0. Okay, why? Because we tried executing this testng.xml, which has no classes included. Okay, but it has one test and its name is module A. Okay, but if we include the class in which the test cases are, then obviously the test cases will execute from here. Okay, but if you're not including the the class name here in the testng.xml, still you can execute that class by going on the class itself. Okay, so simply right click on the class and you can execute this class directly. Okay, test runs are 5, failures is 1. Okay, can you see over here M2 test case, and here also we have something. Okay, so string exception we got here because they are taking the parameters and we don't want the parameters. Okay, now let's run it again. Perfect. So test run are 5 and all of them are passed. Can you see the messages? Corresponding messages are appearing over here. M1, M2, M3, M4, M5. Okay, now we executed the class itself. Okay, but why testng is given and what is the use of testng .xml file? Okay, so it is recommended to execute your test cases from testng.xml itself. Okay, you should not execute your test cases directly from the class, okay, in which you have written the test cases. At your local, if you alone are doing this thing or stuff, okay, for the testing kind of purpose, then you can execute it from your class itself. But it is recommended to execute your test cases right from the testng.xml. Now how we can execute our test cases from testng.xml? So simply what we need to do is we need to write classes tag. There is a name of tag called classes. Under this tag we have to include the class in which test cases are there. So we have one more annotation and its name is class. Okay, so let me quickly write down the annotations that we are going to use over here. Okay, or maybe, sorry. Okay, perfect. Now here, if you have a look, we have included the class test annotations because this class is having the test cases in our case. Now let's execute this class. And once you execute this class, all the test cases present in class will be executed. Can you see over here? Okay. Now, most of the time, your requirement is, I want to execute particular test case first. Okay. And then particular test case will come next. And some other test case will come next and so on. What it means? You want to decide the sequence of execution of test cases. Okay, what you need to do is you want to decide the sequence of execution of the test cases. But in our case, what is happening? First, M1 test case is executing, right? And then M2 is executing, and then M3 is executing, then M4 is executing, and M5 is executing. Okay, why they are executing in this sequence? Okay, it is not because they are written in that sequence. Okay, even if you shuffle them, let's say, I'm going to write this test case on top. So M2 is coming before M1. Here M4 is coming before M3, for example. And if I try to execute them again, then you will observe the same sequence is maintained for the execution. Can you see? The M1 is executed first, M2 is executed next, M3 is executed next, M4 is executed next, and M5 is executed next. So what TestNG is doing is, TestNG will identify the name of method, okay? And according to the alphabetical order, it will execute the test cases present in test class. Okay, so by default, TestNG executes the test cases in alphabetical order. Easy. Okay, but what if I want to customize the flow of execution of the test cases? How I can do that? So for that, we have attributes inside annotations. What we have? Attributes inside annotations. Now, not every annotation have the attributes, okay? But at the rate test annotation and several another annotations are there which has attributes, okay? So what we are going to look at is attributes of test, sorry, at the rate test annotation, okay? Attributes or parameters, whatever you call it as, okay? Attributes of at the rate test annotation. So first attribute we are going to look at is priority. Okay, what is it? Priority. By using this attribute, we can set the execution priority of the test cases. Let's say I want to execute M2 test case first, then M1, then M4, and then M3, and then M5. This is the execution sequence I want. Then what I can do is in front of at the rate test annotation, what I need to write is round bracket open and close. Inside this round bracket open and close, I need to write priority equals to, and priority starts from the negative value to the positive value. Okay, from negative value to the positive value. So you can give a priority like -10 also. Very fine, no problem. Okay, you can give the priority as 0 also. Priority equal to 0. Okay, next maybe priority is equals to maybe 1. Whatever priority you are giving, it will identify those numerical values, it will compare those numerical values, and whichever numerical value is low, the method will be executed. Okay, the method with that annotation will be executed. Okay, priority is equals to 2, and here priority is equals to 3. Okay, perfect. Now let's try to execute this one. Yes, now let's observe the execution sequence. So let me copy this execution sequence and paste it in the Word file so that you can view it perfectly. Okay, let me paste this here. Can you see guys over here? Okay, can you see this? What has happened here is M2 is executed first. Can you see this? M2 is executed first. So let me quickly, sorry. M2 is executed first and then M1 executed, right? And then M4, then M3, and then M5. So this is the customized sequence of execution. So how we did that? By using the parameter attribute. So let's write down about it, okay, in a very decent way, simple way first. Okay, so priority. Now what does mean by priority? Let me write that up here. Okay, now uh, it is used to set the execution priority of test case. Okay, and this can be strictly used with the @test annotation. Okay, you can use it with @test annotation. So let me mark this @test annotation only. Okay, so it is used to set the execution priority of test case. Okay, priority can be in range of negative integer to positive integer. Okay, so whatever range of negative int and positive int is, so that range you can use to give the priority of execution to the test cases. Okay, in a simple words, very easy. Then if duplicate priority is given, okay, let's say priority 3 is given to two test cases. In that case, TestNG will go for the next check, that is alphabetical order. Okay, so it will try to execute the test cases in alphabetical order in that case if they are having same priority. Okay, so example how we can write the priority. Okay, @test in round bracket open and close, you have to write priority is equals to 0 or maybe anything. Okay, 0. So method with this annotation will be executed first. Why? Because 0, but remember here 0 is not the highest priority. Okay, 0 is not the highest priority. Some negative value can also be a priority. So you can write any negative value as a priority also. Okay, why? Because the range of priority is from negative integer to positive integer. Very easy. Okay, first thing we got is priority. Easy. So that was the first attribute that we have seen. Then next attribute we have is enabled. Enabled. Let's say that I have 5 test cases. Okay, but in the second build, I want to execute only 3 test cases. I don't want to execute 2 test cases from this test class. Okay, then how I can do that? So I have one more attribute called as enabled. So I can simply, let's say the last two methods I don't want to execute. So what I will do is I will write enabled equal to false. Okay, enabled equal to false. Perfect. Now these two test cases, test case M3 and M5 will be excluded from the execution. Okay, they will not appear in the script. Understand this. Okay, they will not appear in the script. We have three types of test cases in the TestNG. Test cases pass, test cases failed, and test cases skipped. These are the three types of test cases we have. Okay, so in the report, TestNG categorized the test cases in these three parts: pass, fail, and skipped. Okay, but these two test cases will not be considered as skipped. Why? Because they will not take a part in execution itself. Okay, skipped test cases are test cases which take part in execution, but due to some reason they get skipped. Okay, they take a part in the execution, but due to some reason they get skipped. What can be those reasons? We will going to talk about them in coming future. Okay, so let's execute this again right from testng.xml file. Perfect. Can you see over here? M2, M1 and M4. These are the three test cases which are executed. M3 and M5 are skipped. Why? Because we have set their attribute as enabled equal to false. Okay, so let me show you that how does this method looks. Okay, so let us quickly go over here and let's try to paste this up here. So can you see? this is how our M3 method looks. Here what we have written is priority equal to 2, enabled equal to false. Means this method, this test case will not take a part in execution. Okay. So using this enabled attribute, we can skip the test cases. What we can do is we can skip the test cases. So let me write down. It is used to skip, not to skip, but to disable the test case from execution. Okay, disabling is something different and skipping is something different. Okay, so it is used to disable the test case from execution. So it has two values again, two values, that is true and false. Perfect. It has only two values and its example is this one. Example at the red test, and here in the bracket we need to write enabled equal to true. Okay, this is the example. Or at the red test enabled equal to false. Very easy. Okay, it's not that difficult. It is very easy. So if you want to skip a test case from execution, you can use this uh, attribute of the at the rate test annotation. Remember this. Okay, you cannot use this attribute with some other annotations. Okay, now let's say that you have two classes which consists test cases. Okay, let's say you have two different classes in which your test cases are written. So first class we have is test annotations class. Okay, let's try to write one more class over here, maybe login test cases. This is one more class we have. Okay, now here also I'm going to write some test cases, M1, M2 and M3, maybe three test cases I'm going to write over here. Okay, and let us write some messages here also. uh, Maybe M1 test case of login. Okay, this is the message that we are writing over here. Perfect. Let us write one more test case. Okay, I don't want to write this. Perfect. Now let us try to write some message here. So this is M2 test case of login and this is M3 test case of login. So these are the three methods that we have here. Okay, but we haven't included the second class which consists the test cases, more test cases. Okay, so we have only one class included over here in the testng.xml. Can you see? This is only one class that we have included. So if I try to execute this testng.xml file, then login test cases class test cases will not get executed. Okay, so test cases present inside this login test cases class will not execute. Why? Because the class is not included. So obviously, in a simple words, how we can execute the test cases of this class? By simply adding this class inside the testng.xml file. So how we can add? Write one more class annotation and in the name specify the name of class. Okay, but remember, if your class is in different package, then you have to mention the name of package over here. Let's say src is the name of package that you have. So this package name also, the exact path of the class you need to mention over here. But right now our both classes are in the same package, so we are going to write down directly because they are in the default package. Okay, now let's execute and see what happens. Yeah, can you see M2 test case, M1 test case, M1 test case of login, M2 test case of login, M3 test case of login is executed. Can you see that? It's really easy, pretty simple. So testng.xml file is a single point of execution. It should be a single point of execution for your entire test suite, for your entire project, for no matter how many test cases you have. Okay, but you should have this kind of thing, this kind of execution strategy. So you should execute your test cases right from the testng.xml. That is recommended. Okay. Now next annotation we have is, sorry, next attribute we have is, so let us see. Okay, perfect. This is the second thing we have discussed about, and now let's try to discuss about something more. Okay, groups. Groups. Now what is meant by groups? Okay, so in a simple word, what happens is, let's say I have certain test cases, okay, in class A, certain test cases in class B, certain test cases in class C. Okay, let's say each class, class A, class B, and class C, all three classes are having 10, 10, 10 test cases. Okay, every class is having 10 test cases. So let me try visualizing this. This is first class, second class, and third class. Okay, this is A class, this one is B, this one is C. Okay, these are the three classes that I have. Now what I can do is, every class is having, let's say, 10 test cases in it. Okay, 10 test cases each and every class is having. Okay, perfect. And each class is belonging to some particular module of your project. Okay, some module of your project, or maybe some functionality, or maybe something. Okay, now let's consider that 3 test cases from class A, 2 test cases from class B, and 4 test cases from class C are part of regression. Okay, listen carefully. What I'm trying to say is, 3 test cases from class A, 2 test cases from class B, and 4 test cases from class C are part of regression. And your manager came one day to you and he asked to execute only regression test cases. Then how you are going to do it? So obviously the choice we have right now is to include all 3 classes inside testng.xml. Okay, but if you try to include all 3 classes inside testng.xml, then 10 test cases from this, 10 from this, and 10 from this means 30 test cases will execute. Okay, but how many test cases we want to execute? 3 plus 2, 5 plus 4, that is 9 test cases we want to execute. Okay, so what happens over here is, your test cases are in a different classes. Okay, let's say the class owners are different, means your teammate is writing B class, some other teammate is writing C class. Okay, but you want to execute their test cases also, because you are looking after the regression, and your manager asks you to execute the regression test cases only. Then how you are going to do that? So TestNG gives you a very good choice and very good option over here, and that is groups. So what you can do is, while designing the test cases, you can ask your friends, please mark the test cases which belong to the regression as regression test cases. Okay, so you can notify that this test case belongs to regression group, this test case belongs to smoke group, this test case belongs to sanity group, this test case belongs to retesting group. Okay, so you can assign test cases to particular groups. And how we are going to do that? So for that, we have a very simple thing in the TestNG over here. Okay, so let me clear all the tries. Perfect. So how we are going to do that? So let me simply create 3 simple classes for you people, so that I can show you that what I wanted to say. Okay, perfect. So let me close these two classes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different three classes over here. First is class A. Next we have is class B. And then let's create a class C. Perfect. Now we have three different classes over here and every class is empty. But let's create some test cases over here. Public void m1. And how we can create the test cases? Simply write the annotation @test. Okay. Let's import this annotation. Perfect. Let's create one more. And it is @test again. Okay. So m1, m2, this is the sequence that we are going to follow again. So let me copy these methods. Okay, so randomly I'm creating the methods over here, m1, m2, m3, m4, m5, m6. That's it. So 6 methods in a class A I have written. Let me copy all these methods. Control C and Control V. Again in the class C, same methods. Now we have six methods in class A, class B, and class C. Okay, so let us write down the message over here, some message so that we can observe them. M1 of A. Okay, this is the message that we are going to write. M1 of A, M2 of A, and so on. So let me zoom this in a bit. So simply I'm copying and pasting the messages. Then I'll change them, M1, M2, M3, and so on. M4 of A, M5 of A, M6 of A. That's it. Now we will again copy all these methods from here. We will paste them inside this class. Okay. Instead of A, we are going to replace the B. Okay. It will replace everything. Okay. Perfect. Again, this should be a B, B, B. Okay. B. M6 of class B. And again, same thing in the class CA. Okay, so let's remove this methods. C, 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 and C. That's it. Now we have six methods in class A, class B, and class C. But what we want to do is we want to execute only regression test cases. Okay, let's say in a class A, M1 test case belongs to the regression. Okay, then how we can tell TestNG that M1 test case belongs to TestNG? So for that, simply we need to write groups over here. What we need to write? Groups is equals to curly bracket open close, and in double quotes in a string format strictly. Okay, in a double quotes we have to provide the name of group. Let's say regression. So group name can be anything of your choice. Okay, let's say I can give the name of group as my name also. Avinash is the name of group, for example. So you can write that. So let's say M3 test case belongs to regression. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention the groups. Why groups? Because you can tag one test case to multiple groups. Okay. You can tag one test case to multiple groups. That is why the groups is there. Regression. Okay. Let's say, let me belong this test case one more group, and the name of group is Avinash. Now M3 test case belongs to regression group as well as Avinash group. Okay. Here again, groups is equals to, let's say M4 method also belongs to Avinash group only, not to the regression group. Now we have three methods which are tagged to some group. Okay, M1 test case tagged to regression group, M3 test case tagged to regression group as well as Avinash group, M4 test case is tagged to Avinash group only. Okay, now in the class B, M1 test case, let us tag it to regression, and M5 method, again let us tag it to the regression group. Okay, regression group, and M6 method, let us tag this method to the Avinash group, for example. Okay, let's go to the class C. Let's tag M2 method to the Avinash group. Groups is equals to, okay, so you can mention any number of groups over here, and maybe M6 method to the regression group. Perfect. Now, if I'm going to include all these classes, okay, all these classes inside testng.xml simply, then what will happen? All the test cases present inside all three classes will get executed. What will happen? All test cases present inside all three classes will get executed. Why? Because I haven't told TestNG that please execute regression test cases only. Okay. So what is happening over here? Cannot find class in class path. Okay. Class B it is not able to find. Why? Because its name is having spell miss. Perfect. Okay. Now let's execute it again and let's observe. Okay, can you see over here the result? Okay, all test cases have been executed. Okay, can you see M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6 of A, 6 methods of B, and 6 methods of C. All methods have been executed over here, regardless of anything. Now, what I need to do is, I just want to execute the groups of my choice only. Okay, I just want to execute the regression test cases only. How I can do that? So for that, what you need to do is, you need to remove this classes first, or maybe you can include this classes over here. Okay, and here uh, beneath the test tag, what you need to write is groups. Okay, this is the name of tag. You need to write groups. Inside this tag, what we need to write is run tag. What is the name of tag? Run. Inside run tag, what we need to do is we need to include the group that we want to execute. Let's say regression. Okay, regression. Now regression test cases from these three classes will be executed only. Okay, let's execute this and let's observe. Yeah, done. So let me show you the console. Perfect. Can you see over here, guys? This is the result that we got, and let me paste it over here. Yeah, can you see it? M1 of A is executed, M3 of A is executed, okay? M1 of B is executed, M5 of B is executed, M6 of C is executed. Why only these methods are executed? Because these methods belongs to the regression group. See over here, M1 of A belongs to regression. Then M3 of A belongs to regression. Now observe the execution sequence also once again. M1 of A and M3 of A. Let's see in the B class. Okay, so M1 of B belongs to regression. Now let's observe the execution again. M1 of B is executed. Perfect. Now here M5 of B is tagged to regression, and here in the execution M5 of B is executed. So this is how we can create and execute the groups of our choice. Okay, so let me write down the example over here how we actually can write it. Okay, groups. It is used to group the test cases from same class or from different classes. Okay, means you can group the test cases of same class or maybe of different classes. It should not means it doesn't matter at all that your test cases should be in same class or it should not be in same class or something like that. Okay, you can simply group the test cases of your choice. Okay, any tester, any automation tester who is writing the automation test scripts can tag their test cases to any group that they want. Okay, but when you're working in a project and you have, let's say, 4 to 5 automation testers, then it is recommended to keep posted that to which test case you are assigning to which group. Okay, so your teammate should know about it. Let's say that you are assigning your test case to the regression group and it is not a part of regression at all, then obviously when someone, your manager or maybe your team lead, is trying to execute only regression test cases, at that point your test cases will also get executed, even if it is not a part of regression. So you should take care of it while giving the groups attribute to the @test annotation. Okay, so this is how we can include the test cases for execution which belongs to the regression group. Okay, so let's say I want to include Avinash group also. You know? Now let's observe what happens. In this point, regression as well as Avinash, both group test cases will get executed. First, regression group will execute and then Avinash group will execute. Okay. So the test cases which are not tagged to any group will not execute at this point. Okay. So we have total 18 test cases, but let's observe that how many test cases are executing. So listen carefully what I'm saying. Okay. Observe over here. How many test cases are executed? They are not 18. Okay. Only regression test cases first executed and then Avinash test cases executed next. Did you get this point? Okay. But other test cases which are not tagged to any group didn't executed. Okay. None of the method, okay, which has any of the tag, okay, didn't get executed. Sorry for the English, maybe bad English. Okay. Okay. So this test case, this is M2 test case of the class A, which is not tagged to any group. This test case is skipped from the execution. Not skipped, but it didn't take a part in execution. Okay, it didn't take a part in execution. Means this test case was not considered as a execution group. Okay. Again, here M5 test case is there. Okay, this test case is not tagged to any group again, but this test case is not executed. Same M6 test case from class A is not executed. So in the result, you cannot see M5 or M6 test cases of class 1. Can you see? You cannot see them because they didn't execute it. Total test run are 8, failure are 0, and skips are 0. Did you get this point? So it is really easy. Okay, groups. This is called a groups. Groups. So let me write down about it quickly over here. Groups. It is used to group the test cases from same class or different classes. Okay, this is the first point. Next, what we can say about groups is we can execute particular group or groups from TestNG.xml file only. Okay, you don't have a choice to execute your groups from anywhere else but in the testng.xml file. Okay, you can execute it from the testng.xml file only. Okay, it's pretty easy. Now next is example how we can write it. So we can tag a test case to one or multiple groups by using following syntax. Okay, now what is the syntax? Let's see this. Okay, syntax is @test, and here groups is equals to maybe A, comma, B, comma, C. So there is no limit. Okay, so whatever number of groups you want to include, you can include. Okay, this is the syntax. Okay, so this is the way through which you can tag your test case to particular group or groups. But how to execute? To execute group from testng.xml file, following syntax is used. Okay, now what is the syntax for that? What we need to do is groups. This is the name of tag we need to write. Inside this tag, what we need to write is run. Okay, inside run, what we need to write is include. Include. Okay, here in the include, we need to give the name of group that we want to execute. Okay, and then we should close the run, and then we should close the groups. Okay, let's close this include also. So this is the syntax. This is the syntax to execute the group from TestNG. You don't have any other choice to execute the group from directly class or maybe something else like that. Okay, so this is how you can execute the group. So this is all about the group. Okay, next attribute we have is depends on methods. Okay, depends on methods. So this is called as dependency also. Dependency. Okay, let's say dependency. So it is altogether a separate topic again inside inside TestNG. So what this topic sees is, so let me quickly manage this one. Okay, perfect. So dependency in TestNG, dependency in TestNG. Okay, so this is the very important and crucial feature of the TestNG. Now, what is meant by dependency? Okay, let's say that you are writing your test cases in your project. Okay, but you may encounter with a situation where your one test case is dependent on some another test case. Okay, let's say that you have a test case of verifying the balance, account balance. Okay, now to verify the account balance, what you need to do is you need to log in first. Okay, log into your account using the valid credentials. After logging in, you can check the amount or the account balance. Okay, so let's say that we may have written a logic to log in to the banking application. Okay, we may have written the logic of it under some test case. Okay, then we will not write that same logic again. Okay, we will not write that same logic once again. So what we will do is we will use that test case which consists the logic of login. Okay, and we will execute that test case first, and then we will execute the test case of our choice, and that is checking the balance of account. Okay, so our test case is now dependent on the login test case. Our test case is dependent on the login test case. How is it dependent? So let us say that your environment is test environment where 5 test users have been created. 5 valid test users and test passwords have been created. But let's say there is a second build deployed. Okay, and all the 5 usernames and password are lapsed from the database. They got vanished somehow. Now, if you are not able to log into the system, how you are going to check the balance? Okay, so it is recommended to create the dependency in such cases. Okay, so it is recommended to make your test case dependent on the login test case. Means when the login test case will pass successfully, then only our test case will execute. This is the first scenario. Okay, second thing is sometimes your test case is dependent on group of test cases. Okay, let's say 10 or 15 or maybe 20 test cases are there, and your test case is dependent on those groups. Let's say after execution of the regression test cases, you are allowed to execute your test case. This is the scenario. Okay, after executing the regression group, okay, all the test cases from the regression group, okay, once they are executed successfully, then only your test case can be executed. This is the scenario. In that case, your test case dependency is on the group. Okay, so your test case, okay, test case can be dependent on dependent on some other test case, or sorry, some other test case, or some other group. Okay, so your test case can be dependent on some other method, test case, or some other group. Okay, so in that case, how we can achieve that dependency? So to achieve that dependency, we again have attribute for the @test annotation, and they are depends on methods and depends on groups. Okay, depends on methods and depends on groups. So these are the attributes that we have for the @test test test @test annotation. Okay, now how we can actually create that dependency? So let's try creating the dependency. Okay, so let's say that class A is there. Okay, inside this class A, M2 method is there, and right now what I'm doing is I'm going to create a dependency of M2 method on M1 method. Okay, so let's say depends on methods equal to depends on methods it is. Okay, so methods means your test case can be dependent on one method or maybe more than one methods. So whatever the name of method your test case is dependent upon should be mentioned over here. So let's say M1 is the name of test case on which our test case is dependent. Can you see? Now, if M1 test case get failed, then M2 test case will not get executed and it will be marked under the skipped test case. So this is the concept of skipping the test case. Okay. If the M1 test case is failed, in that case, M2 test case will get skipped from the execution. Okay, but let's simply execute it first so that we can observe how dependency works. In this case, M2 method will execute because M1 method is going to pass. Okay, so right now I am only executing the class A. So only 6 test cases will get executed. Okay, don't get confused. Perfect. Can you see total run 6, failure 0, and skips 0? Okay, M2 is not skipped. Now let's try to forcefully fail this test case. Okay, perfect. Now let's execute. Yep, done. Can you see over here M1, M3, M4, M5, M6? These are the 5 test cases which are executed successfully. 5 test cases are passed. Can you see? M3, M4, M5, M6. These are the passed. M1 is the failed. Okay. And here skip is 1. Can you see? Skip is 1. So one test case is skipped. And what is that? M2. M2 test case is skipped. Why? Because M2's test case was dependent on M1 test case. So if M1 test case is going to fail, then M2 test case will not execute. That is the very good advantage of the TestNG. Why? Because your execution time is going to be saved over here. Let's say 5 or 10 test cases are there which are dependent on some other test cases. Okay, so simply create a dependency. If the dependent methods are not going to execute it, then obviously your test cases will not execute and it will save the time. So that is the dependency, and it is also called as hard dependency. Hard dependency. And one more type we have is soft dependency. Okay, soft dependency. Hard dependency and soft dependency. These are the two types of dependencies that we have. So what is hard dependency? The one that we have seen earlier. Okay, the example that we have seen is the example of hard dependency. Now how you can achieve the soft dependency? Okay, for that we need to go back in the testing in the Eclipse. Okay, depends on methods. This is the first. Depends on methods. Okay, so let me write that down. So simply okay, so what we can do is, first one we have is depends on depends on methods. This is the attribute that we have under @test annotation, and here inside this what we have is depends on methods. So it is used to create dependency of test case on several other test cases or methods. Okay, means you can create a dependency on several other test cases or methods. So let's say that we have one more method here, but that is not worth of giving the example. Okay, perfect. So it is used to create dependency of test case on several other test cases or other methods. Okay, several other test cases we will say, several other test cases. So this is the depends on methods. What is the example of it? @test, okay, and then depends on methods and equal to curly bracket open close M1 comma M2 comma and so on. Okay, you can mention the list of methods on which your test case is dependent. Okay, so even if a single method gets failed from this list, your test case will not get executed. That is hard dependency. Even a single test case is not executed from this list. Okay, even if a single test case gets failed from this list, then your test case will not get executed. So that is a hard dependency. Okay, so this is depends on methods. In the same way, same fashion, we have depends on groups. Depends on groups. Now what is meant by that? Sorry, depends on groups. So what is meant by that? Okay, so it is used to create dependency of test case on several groups. Okay, so I'll call them as test groups, several test groups. So let's say we have seen that the regression group is there, Avinash group is there. There were two groups. Okay, let's say I want to make my test case dependent upon the regression test cases. Means if any of the test cases failed from the regression group, then my test case should not get executed. This is the dependency I want. So how I can achieve that? So simply you can mention depends on groups over here. Let's say for this M5 test case, what I'm going to write is depends on groups equal to, and here name of the group. Let's say regression. Now can you see M1 test case is a part of regression? Okay, now let's execute the regression test cases only from this. So we are going to execute only regression group here, and let's observe whether class A is which method we have created dependency. This one is M5 method of class A, whether it's get executed or not. Okay, let us see. Perfect. So failure is 1 and 5 test cases are actually totally 5 test cases have been executed. M1 of A is executed, M3 of A is executed, M1 of B is executed, M5 of B, and M6 of C. Now the test case of our choice was not included in the execution. Why? Because it doesn't belong to the regression group itself. So somehow we have to execute all of the test cases. So what we will do is, or maybe let's make it, let's assign this test case to Avinash group, for example, for the time sake. Now groups is equals to, let's tag this test case to Avinash group so that it should get executed, and let's execute both the groups, regression as well as Avinash. Now they will work fine. Okay, let's see. Perfect. Now can you see over here, skip is 1, total run 9. Why? Because regression and Avinash both groups are executed. Okay, where failure is 1, M1 test case of class A is failed. Okay, and skip is 1. Now which one is skipped? It is the M5 method of class A which is skipped. Why? Because it depends upon the regression group. Did you get this point now? So this is how you can create a dependency on groups, depends on groups. So example is @test depends on groups is equals to M1, M2, sorry, double quotes is compulsory. Okay, M2, comma, and the list of methods. Obviously you can mention as many methods as you want in this list. So even if a single test case from this group get executed, it is not method, it should be a group. Okay, G1, let's say G2, and so on. Okay, so even if a single test case from these groups, G1 or G2 or maybe any group, gets failed, in that case test case with this annotation will not be executed. It will be marked as skipped test case. This is the dependency. Okay, this is how you can create the dependency using depends on methods and depends on groups attribute of @test annotation. Okay, this is all for the day. Do you guys have any questions?